Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over a new masterpiece called Knowledge is Power. So, let's get into it. After seeing the spoilers for the murders at Karlov Manor, this card was, without question, my number one chase card for the set. It just looked incredibly powerful. And of course, like this owl, I needed to join the Blue Man group. Unlike Tobias, I did not blue myself. But nonetheless, Knowledge is Power definitely lives up to the hype. It's a very strong card. It's definitely worth chasing. It has a lot of synergy with some cards that came out in the new set. It has a lot of synergy with cards that currently exist in the game. It has synergy with one of the more recent Planeswalkers that was issued, along with some other Planeswalkers that have come out recently, or even all the way further back as well. And it has a lot of synergy with really powerful creatures. So it definitely has a lot going for it. It does, however, have a few limitations. And those limitations make it so that the card is not quite as powerful as I originally thought it would be. Yes, it's still very powerful. Yes, it's still worth chasing. But no, it is not broken. And so for that, I am grateful. I like that it's not broken, but it just sits in that very powerful sort of zone. Now, the reason why I'm saying that I don't think this card is broken, and if you're wondering what is that limitation, Knowledge of Power reads, when you draw a card during your turn, reinforce each creature you control until end of turn, then gain 2 mana. Because it says then gain 2 mana, you need to have a creature on the board in order to gain that mana. So you can't start your whole looping prowess if you're trying to make a loop deck unless you already have a creature out on the battlefield. Furthermore, as this thing winds up gaining mana, but it doesn't draw you cards, you need something else that's going to draw you cards if you want to turn it into a loop engine. Honestly, for me, I found that the most powerful use of this card was for the reinforce each creature you control until end of turn whenever you draw a card. As paired with some of the stronger creatures that we have at our disposal, this wound up making for some really easy and really fun wins. The 20 mana cost definitely makes it tricky to throw into a loop deck because loop decks tend to like lesser mana cost cards, unless it's Legacy, Green Conversion, or Omniscience. But I feel like that doesn't really count, and it definitely doesn't apply to Standard. So for Standard, we want typically slightly lesser mana cost cards for loops, and so this can get in the way of you looping your deck like crazy. Once again, the card is very powerful. I'm not saying this to deter you from trying to get this card. I'm just trying to set expectations straight before you do wind up getting it. It's very good, but it has its limitations. In terms of things that synergize with Knowledge is Power, I love the pairing of Knowledge is Power with the new Jace the Perfected Mind Planeswalker. I recently reviewed Jace the Perfected Mind. This was before Murders at Karlov Manor came out. I would actually elevate Jace the Perfected Mind into the S tier for me now that we have the cards from Murders at Karlov Manor. I won't put it in the S plus tier because I had previously put it in the A tier, and so it going from A to S just shows that it really does need cards in order to be great. And it is very great right now. The thing that synergizes so well with Knowledge is Power is this passive, Compleated Intelligence. At the beginning of your turn, if you have less than 4 cards in your hand, draw cards equal to the difference. So with the way that works, plus your natural turn card draw, this means that if you empty out your hand, you're going to be drawing 5 cards per turn. And what that means with Knowledge is Power is that if you've got a creature down, you're going to guaranteed be reinforcing all of your creatures 5 times every single turn, and you're going to be gaining 10 mana into those cards that you're drawing. So you wind up getting a whole lot out of Jace the Perfected Mind as your Planeswalker, and it's pretty nutty. You get some really cool things happening. Another card that I really like with Knowledge is Power, especially with Jace, and this will be covered in a separate video because of how much I love it, is Steamcore Scholar. This thing is going to enter the battlefield, draw you cards, discard cards, and then its level is going to increase. And as its level increases, you're going to gain more mana and more loyalty based on this thing's level. So just further incentives to draw cards. Knowledge is Power is going to want you to draw cards, And so that winds up working itself out really nicely. You get this cool loop of drawing cards, gaining mana, gaining loyalty, and if you're using Jace the Perfected Mind, the third ability effectively gives you full mana to all cards in your hand, and so you get this really, really neat loop from that. If you have Time Reversal from Puzzle Masters Blue, this is another great card to be running with Knowledge is Power. So is Days Undoing from Origins, as these are both going to draw you a whole bunch of cards. If you have the two of them together, you can, and there are 10 blue gems on the battlefield, you can get some really cool turns where you Time Reversal into a Days Undoing, and as a result, if you had a full hand when you Time Reversaled, you wind up drawing 10 cards, which is then going to reinforce all of your creatures 10 times, and the Days Undoing is then going to draw those cards, give 3 mana to everything, and Knowledge's Power is going to start feeding that first card as well. So you wind up getting these little mini loops, but those mini loops are definitely enough to win the game. So really, really cool interaction there. You will be seeing this deck here in the video in my gameplay section. This is probably my favorite deck to play with Knowledge's Power, but that's more of a shiny new thing sticking out to me. I'm not saying that this is the best deck with Knowledge's Power, but I do really, really enjoy it. In terms of some other things that are going to pair really, really well with Knowledge's Power, we've got stuff like Galta Stampede Tyrant. This is just an example of a creature with an incredibly high base power that when you draw cards is going to boost a whole bunch of times. So Knowledge's Power in Galta, you're going to reinforce Galta a bunch of times, and you're going to pick up some free wins from that. Because when you start reinforcing a 15-15, you hit that threshold of killing your opponent real darn fast. Another creature that works really well with Knowledge's Power right now is Blade Coil Serpent. This thing's going to draw you a whole bunch of cards. It's going to give them mana. But most importantly, it's going to draw you a bunch of cards, which is going to reinforce all of your creatures and is going to kill your opponent. The last sort of big card draw card that I personally really like with Knowledge's Power is Nissa's Revelation, because this thing here is going to draw 5 cards, gain 20 life, it's green, we can pair it with Galta, and we can make some incredibly fun things happen as a result of the pairing of the two of them. So this will wind up being another deck that you'll see in the video. I've gotten some really, really big Galtas from this. Simply have Tempt with Discovery and Thunderous Debut try to pull us into as many Galtas with Atraxa and Blade Coil Serpent and just sort of get the ball rolling for a whole bunch of evil on our opponent. So really, really good. The last sort of interaction that I really want to showcase in this is what happens when you try to make Knowledge loop. And so in order to make Knowledge loop, you're gonna need something that's going to kill your opponent. And so this particular deck was what I settled on as my favorite Knowledge's Power loop deck, as we have 2 ways of killing our opponent. The first way is Captain Ripley Vance. As we cast spells and we're looping with spells, Ripley can kill our opponent by dealing damage directly to my opponent's Planeswalker. And then the other way is Blade Coil is going to be drawing us a bunch of cards. And so even if we don't get Ripley, Blade Coil can get really big, really fast as we draw a ton of cards. Now, there's sort of a little elephant in the room. It's the exclusive at the bottom left, Case of the Ransacked Lab. This card is another one that's going to pair very well with Knowledge's Power. This is another one that I thought would be an incredibly powerful card, but definitely has its limitations. But the important piece for this one is that once you've solved this, every time you cast a spell, you're going to draw a card and give it 5 mana. So you're going to be drawing cards every time you cast spells. So even if the spell itself doesn't wind up drawing you a card, you're going to wind up drawing a card for having cast that spell, and then that's going to loop in with Knowledge's Power. I'm playing this with Rawl. Rawl's first ability is going to help get us to our combo pieces for looping. That's always very important for a loop deck, is being able to try and fetch toward the loop pieces that you need. And of course, the third ability on Rawl is going to make it so that when we cast spells, we're able to do damage and draw more cards, which with Knowledge's Power is going to then give us some more mana. So those are all my favorite interactions. You'll also be seeing this deck in the gameplay section as well. So you're going to be seeing 3 games played with 3 separate decks that are all trying to achieve slightly different things. You're going to see one that's more of built around drawing cards. You're going to see one that's more built on big critters that are then going to get reinforced. And then finally, you're going to see one where I'm looping. So hopefully that gives you sort of a complete picture of what Knowledge's Power is going to be able to look like if you're able to build up your collection and build optimal decks with Knowledge's Power. So let's go ahead and check out gameplay. So this first match is going to be with new Jace. We want to try to draw into Knowledge's Power as soon as possible. And I have done that. That's great. Okay. So As we already have a Knowledge is Power in my hand, the next thing that I'm going to want is Cut Your Losses, just to convert a whole bunch of gems. And so I'm going to just start throwing things away. I'm not against a black Planeswalker, so I don't have to worry about them using infinite obliteration on me and getting rid of my Knowledge is Power. Sometimes I will actually try and cast a Converter first, if it's looking like I'll be able to get it down on turn 1. Here I won't. So the number 1 priority is going to be to get Knowledge's Power down, and then to draw into Cut Your Losses. And there we go. We've got Cut Your Losses, we've got a creature, we've got Knowledge's Power, we've got a Converter. This is looking perfect. So I'm reorganizing my hand. I'm actually putting the Cut Your Losses higher in my hand, as you can see, because Cut Your Losses is going to hopefully enable us to get a mana boom that will get us the Knowledge's Power out faster. And so here you can see I've got Knowledge's Power out this turn where I would not have otherwise. And so my opponent's going to get full mana, Hollow the Gemstone, that's fine. I don't love seeing that because that card is terrifying, but it's also not too big of a deal here. So I drew into my Scholar. This is just getting better and better as we go. I'm going to go ahead, drop one of the cards in my hand. The Steam's Core Scholar does need me to have 2 cards in my hand below it in order to cast and do its goodness. So I am actually going to leave things as they are. I have a black into white match, which is good, as black into white is going to get me 10 mana. That doesn't quite get me enough for the Scholar, and so as it doesn't quite give me enough for the Scholar, I think what I'm going to do is ping my opponent's supports a little bit, just knock them down so that if my opponent does wind up matching the mocks on the bottom, it'll be destroyed. They did not, that's okay. My leveler will wind up destroying that thing. And now here you'll see that my leveler is starting to reinforce. So having that first creature is very, very important for this to function. And then I actually am going to, my Knowledge's Power has 2 shields left. There's a blue match on the bottom that could bring it down to 1 shield. I'm going to keep the Knowledge's Power in my hand. I do want that 1 there just to sort of protect it a little bit more. It's important to protect your supports if it looks like they're going to get splattered. And so here we're going to draw 2 more cards. That's going to reinforce my leveler 2 more times. And you'll see now that this simple 8/8 has rapidly become a 40/40. And it's starting to get pretty scary looking. Now, next turn I'm guessing is going to be the turn that I win. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to throw a whole bunch of stuff in my hand away. This is one of the advantages of New Jace. You can just throw things away and draw a bunch of cards. So as much as I would love to cast these Steam Core Scholars, I'm just going to throw them all away. I don't have a guaranteed way of playing the Echoing Deeps, so that one's going to get thrown away as well. I'm going to be guaranteed to get to my 3rd ability here. So that's going to enable me to use my 3rd ability and give all 5 cards that I draw this next turn full mana. So my opponent plays Hollow the Gemstone, no big deal. I get a Days Undoing that's absolutely magnificent here, as we're going to be able to make the creatures reinforced like crazy here. So let's definitely go ahead and do that. So I take a look at what I have. The Cut Your Losses is honestly really tempting. But I like how many blue gems are on the battlefield here, just in the event that the first card that I draw winds up being my other card draw that's going to convert based on blue, or give me mana based on blue. So I draw Cityscape Leveler first. That's a little bit unfortunate, but it's really not a big deal. You'll see that this is more than enough for me to wind up defeating my opponent. And so I was able to make very quick work of this match. I'm hitting here for 110 damage, and that's going to be game over. So Jace the Perfected Mind here is really super effective with Knowledge's Power. Let's take a look at the next deck, the Kasmina deck, where we're using our big, beefy baddie. Our opponent with Kasmina is Puzzle Masters Nissa. That is entirely terrifying. That Planeswalker crashes the game like nothing else. This starting hand, however, is excellent. Wow, this is a difficult choice. Do you go for the Serpent first, or do you go for the Tempt first? I'm actually going to go for the Serpent first, just because I might be able to cast it this turn. with what's on the battlefield. I can see a way that I would be able to cast it this turn. So let's have the Blade Coil be the one that we try first. Yep, we're going to be casting it this turn. That's going to be giving mana to everything that I drew. And oh man, this draw was just beautiful. Let's get the Mana Crypt down. And then after the 10th with Discoveries, I think Atraxa into Galta is going to be the way. Wow, this is going to be spicy. Okay, we're going to go white into blue on the bottom and see if we can't get a Cascade going. Let's see what happens. No Cascade, but I did get the Mana Crypt down, and it came down in a pretty excellent spot because it's a spot that I'll be able to get the mana for it. So let's go ahead and just get the free 10th with Discovery here. So free 10th with Discovery is always going to be a good thing, especially since I have another 10th with Discovery in my hand. I want all these cards. I want all of them. But I will be going for the Knowledge is Power. This is a Knowledge is Power showcase, and I have all the other pieces. Oh man, we've got Galta here and Nissa's Revelation. Oh, it's so tempting to take the Galta because I love Galta, but I'm going to be taking the Nissa's Revelation just so that we have some more card draw here in my hand. Of course, taking the Galta may have honestly been the better choice since these things don't have haste beyond the Blade Coil Serpent, but your early game goal with this deck is actually to get Galta or 10th with Discovery down because you want the conversion, right? Your goal is going to be to have the conversion happen first, and then everything else is just sort of like a bonus. I don't need my Great Aurora here. That is entirely pointless. I don't need another Mana Crypt here, so that thing can go. I don't need that one, so that thing can go. I'm going to use my third ability. This is going to reinforce all my creatures 3 times, and then it's also going to give me a chance to fish for something else that's going to draw me more cards or convert more gems to green for me. It's going to be a Nissa's Revelation, so that this is game over. I've actually had this deck loop where I've got my Galta and crew into the hundreds, which is very, very powerful. But for this particular match, I'm just going to let this happen as it is. We're going to get the 5 cards to Nissa's Revelation, and then these 5 cards are going to reinforce all of the creatures 5 times, and you'll see that we made very quick work of Puzzle Masters Nissa. I don't think that Nissa even cast a card. No, I think that's it. So you can ramp up pretty fast. Even without things being like absolutely perfect, you get big creatures and then they get real buff. Real buff. Real fast. So that's Kasmina with Galta, and yeah, it's nasty. Let's check out the loop deck with Rawl next. Alrighty, let's check out Rawl. So for Rawl, this is actually a pretty good starting hand. You actually want Case of the Ransacked Lab before you want Knowledge is Power when you're running the loop deck. You want to solve the case. The case is solved when you've cast 6 or more cards, and so it takes a little bit of time to get there to make your loop function as an engine. And so getting the case first is ideal. Getting a Ripley in my starting hand is also pretty good, and getting a Time Reversal as well is decent. I'm up against a black Planeswalker. That's always really scary. You have to worry about an infinite obliteration happening. And so I'm going to be making my swaps and trying to get things down kind of accordingly. So we'll see how that works out for me. An Endless Detour is good as well. This just gives me a little bit of protection in case my opponent is playing some kind of horribleness, which against a Dakon I fully expect. So, all right, we get the case down. And so now we need for the case to solve. And so for the case to solve, I'm going to have to start playing cards at some point. I'm actually going to have the Endless Detour finish charging its mana, and then I'm going to start working on the Time Reversal. Time Reversal, if we can get it off with a full hand, will be really good. And then as my opponent hasn't really played that much, we might be able to get a bunch of extra mileage out of it as well. So my opponent does play Urza's. If I play the Time Reversal now, I will draw 4 cards. That's not a lot. And then they get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. Draw 4 cards, get 7 mana into those 4 cards. We can try it, just if we get a Cascade that's really lucky. We did not, so that's going to happen next turn, depending on what my opponent plays and what happens. Decimator Web. is going to destroy cards from my library and make Phyrexian Toxins. Okay. Not too scary, actually. So here, if we can get the Ripley off, that would be perfect. I'd love to get one Ripley down on the battlefield if I can. So let's see if we can't make that happen in some way. Well, there's a Knowledge's Power. I don't actively want to destroy it, but I really don't have a choice here. So we're going to destroy the Knowledge's Power there. And then as for matches, I could take my matches. I think what I'll do is I'm going to freeze down the time reversal. I'm going to move it down in my hand to protect it from an infinite obliteration. I'm going to let the Endless Detour try and destroy something for my opponent, just so that I can throw some things onto the battlefield. We'll see how this goes. I do get Ripley, and then I guess I'll just destroy the token. This is going to count for casting cards. And so casting cards is a good thing for me, as that's going to get me closer to solving my case. I can't attack, so here we get to see the benefits of, well, not being able to attack really doesn't matter for me. So here we just want to destroy as many gems as possible, because there aren't that many blue gems on the battlefield, and we'd like to get more blue gems. So I'm going to go ahead, take loyalty, hope I get loyalty into some blue gems, and that's exactly what happens. So here we'll see what I draw. We get another time reversal, we get a Citadel, we've got... Okay, this is going to let me cast Talent of the Telepath, which is good. That's going to get me a Cut Your Losses, that's great. And now here we're pretty close to Loop Central, just depending on what I draw. I would love to draw into a Knowledge's Power in some way at this point. I don't have one yet, but I'm confident that I'm really close to one. So I've got a Blade Coil in my hand. I'm actually going to take the case here so that I can protect it a little bit, because I'm going to be doing Cut Your Losses, and then Cut Your Losses. I'm going to get rid of the time reversal here, which might seem like a funky choice, but I've got Cut Your Losses, Sunken Citadel. Let's play the case, and then let's have Cut Your Losses at the bottom. Okay, I'm feeling really confident about this turn. I think that this turn can end the game depending on what we wind up drawing. I get a Cut Your Losses. I could destroy Ripley. I'm not going to. Definitely don't want to. I've got another case. Let's see if we can draw into Knowledge's Power. Perfect. There's Knowledge's Power. And so with what we've drawn so far, this should be good. I could fetch a case or talent. Let's take Talent of the Telepath here, just so that we can keep this going a little bit more smoothly. You'll see that I'm already drawing cards every single time I play a spell, because we've got the case solved. I'm going to take the Blade Coil here. Ooh, I was just barely short of the Cut Your Losses there. So that was where not having a Knowledge's Power down made it so that the loop didn't fully go off that turn, which is part of why getting the Knowledge's Power down is just so incredibly important. So here, I actually don't need all of these Cut Your Losses. I'm actually going to throw one away and filter my deck a little bit, see if I can't get something else that is kind of juicy here. Rite of Flame might be the juicy option, but I'm going to take Sunken Citadel because I think that's the safe one. Okay, here we're definitely going to end the game this turn. This is an absolute game ender this turn, I think. Yeah, let's swap those two in terms of placement, and then let's see how loopy this gets. Here we go. We're converting a whole bunch of gems. The game is having a problem because of all these gems that we're converting, but that's okay. We're not too worried about that. We get the Knowledge's Power down. We've now got all the different pieces together, and so we're going to get the Blade Coil going. This is just going to draw us a bunch more cards so that the time reversal is a little bit more effective. And then we're going to be reinforcing our creatures a bunch. We're going to be pinging my opponent with Ripley. So here's another Cut Your Losses. Entirely irrelevant, but it's going to draw us another card because of the case. And now here we're going to draw 5 more cards. We're just going to throw the hand away. That's going to reinforce the creatures 5 more times. It's going to draw us a whole new hand. We get another Cut Your Losses. That's awesome. Okay. And now we're hoping for something else that draws cards. We don't get anything else that explicitly draws cards, but that's not a huge deal because they're all going to be getting a bunch of mana, and every spell cast is ultimately going to draw me cards and give me mana. So I get a Sunken Citadel. That's going to get 5 and then another 1. I'm not going to be destroying anything here. The Case and the Detour are going to help me to continue to draw cards and get mana. The Talent of the Telepath is going to do the same. Rite of Flame is excellent. We definitely want that here. I do not want to stop my loop, even though I have won the game already. I do want to gain my mana. I want my Sunken Citadel to convert some stuff for me. Keep this going, keep it alive a little bit. The Detour is going to keep pinging my opponent. And you'll see here, we're going to gain a whole bunch of mana from Ripley, and we're going to finish off the game. So it gets a little bit dicier with the loop deck, just because you need so many different things to happen in order to go off, right? I had matches where I was able to loop more quickly than that one, but I felt like that match was like, it was a very real representation of what will happen in a lot of your matches if you choose to go the loop route. You'll notice that the 2 games before this were much quicker, much quicker. And so as a result, my personal suggestion, if you're chasing Knowledge is Power, is chase it to make some really cool beater decks. Don't chase it to try and make loop decks. Can you make it loop things? Absolutely. Can you make it loop things and you win? Absolutely. But I think that honestly, the best way to play this is to get a creature down with a solid base power toughness, and then to try and win the game off of something like Time Reversal, Days Undoing, Nissa's Revelation. Make that creature get really big, and then swing for game quickly. And you can have some matches that end in like 2-3 minutes and call it good. So there's my door. That's a good signal for me to stop. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.